Good afternoon. It's another Sunday. And once it is Sunday, 12 noon Eastern, Sacred Conversations with Simone. Aisha. Aiko. I'm going to call you today, darling. All right, let me get my guest on because I see he is there. Before I add you, let me just pin the information for my guest today because I always struggle with this. How are you guys doing today? Okay, where are we? Dav, I'm coming. Just let me pin you so folks can, start to follow you. And then, okay, so you're pinned. And now I am going to add you. Let me tell you something, yes? Okay, Dav, you send me a request. And let's see how that goes. Camille, I barely holding on, eh? Thanks to you. Thanks to you, my dear. I was with Camille last night. Amazing experience. One of these days, she's going to allow me to at least carry it live somewhere. I'm doing well, Aisha. Thanks for asking. Here we go. Because for some reason it wasn't. Hi.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Got it. I'll turn my volume up. Yes. Thank you for having me.
Of course. When I heard you speak in the Clubhouse, I just happened in on the room because I think you have your show on Clubhouse like 10 o'clock Friday, or is it Saturday night?
It's at 8 o'clock Eastern time
Eastern.
on
Okay.
Tuesdays and Fridays.
Okay. And I sat in this room and the focus was on, Black men mental health. So I said, well, let me hang out in here for a minute. And the entire experience, because that's what it was for me, was moving and also floored me that you were able to create a space in a public forum where Black men felt comfortable to speak about what was paining them. We've come a long way.
Yeah.
We've come a long way. And I'm not going to give you a perspective as to why, as a woman, I'm saying that. I'm not focused on the opinions of women for this hour. The focus is on Black men healing, right? And what I liked even more about the room is that you said we're not having any women speak. I so appreciated that because, we can talk. I speak the truth. And at times, and I'm guilty, let me not pretend as if it doesn't exist for me. Sometimes we don't listen. And sometimes we only listen to respond, right? So immediately I got in contact with you and I asked you if you would please come on Sacred Conversations with me. This is what my show is about. This is what we're focused on. And you agreed immediately. And I want to say thank you. I want to
Absolutely.
say thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And I started to follow you on IG. And you posted this story. Hashtag ending the shame. You wrote an open letter outlining being sexually assaulted by a prominent pastor in Houston, Texas. I'm not going to go into the story. I want people to actually follow you on IG and read the story for themselves, right? And if they have their questions regarding that story, they can direct message you on that. How is your healing going?
It's a journey. Even before this happened, I've been on a journey of healing for the last 10 years. Started with therapy and just has continued. Black Man Healing was birthed from me continuing my journey on healing. And but it's a process. Like I've never in my life been this vulnerable with my personal life. I've never shared a lot of personal things with the world. People that know me know a lot about me, but nobody knows everything about me. And so when I released that letter, that is part of my healing process. That is part of my purpose. That is part of my journey. That is part of me working on being more vulnerable as a Black man and not living in shame when things that have happened to me as a Black man, and being able to just freely share that with the world and not be ashamed of that. But also part of my healing process and my healing journey too is to encourage other Black men to heal and let other Black men know you're not alone, and that harm and trauma happens to all of us, and how we experience it may be different, but that's one common thing that you'll find. Like even listening to Black men on Black Man Healing, like you'll find this common thread amongst Black men where we all have sort of suffered in silence. A lot of Black men have been abused, and the data doesn't show that. Like if you look at the data, it shows that Black women report more abuse, especially sexual assault and abuse, any type of assault. It's more reported in relationships and in the Black community by Black women. But I'm certain that a Black man felt that they were safe and felt that they were heard and felt that they were protected, and felt that this wouldn't emasculate them in some kind of way, you would hear more Black men sharing their stories and talking about being abused, and especially from a sexual assault standpoint, and raped and those kind of things. Like you would hear more stories about that if society was open to listening to Black men and our trauma and our issues. And so I'm still on my journey. I'm still, there's anytime you open yourself up and you share stories like that, you have church people coming at you sideways. You have all these people coming at you, and keep in mind, I never named this pastor, but I am going to name him. So he will be named soon. So that is also part of this process too, because even though I'm in my healing journey and those kind of things, that doesn't mean I don't want accountability. That doesn't mean I don't want justice. And that doesn't mean that I want this man, this predator, this rapist to continue to harm the Black community. So I want to be clear on that too. A lot of people ask me why I didn't list them in the beginning. I didn't list them in the beginning purposely because I knew when people read that story, as detailed as I was, somebody else was going to come forward. Somebody else was going to out this man, the universe, God of the universe. It happened like that night. That night that I released that story, there was a black man that was a member of that church. He and his wife inboxed me, and that the pastor had raped this man on New Year's Eve, drugged and raped him. And it shows you, my letter shows you the miscarriage of justice in our justice system, that maybe this wouldn't have happened if they would have addressed when I went to the police in September. Maybe December 31st would have never happened if they would have gotten this predator off the street, if this man would have been held accountable. You get what I'm saying? Like, so my letter is bigger than just what happened to me. My letter is about what happens to black men and black boys in this country when we are trying to do the right thing, when we are trying to move forward. They will step in and intervene when we take matters into our own hand. Because I won't sit here on this platform and tell you, there have not been days where I have not thought about taking matters into my own hands. You know, but I also understand that justice will be served. I also have faith in God of the universe that all things are conspiring for my good, and that me releasing that letter set a lot of people free, set a whole bunch of people free, especially black men, and them knowing that you're not alone in your abuse and those things. And I even part of my healing process, like, it took me 2 months to write that letter.
I was going to add, that was going to be my next question. How long did it take you to write the letter, and what was the process like for you emotionally and spiritually?
I did. I started and I would stop. There was a lot of doubt that showed up. There was a lot of fear. There was anxiety. There was shame. I mean, there were so many things that kept stopping me from doing it. And there were parts of me that didn't want to put it out, but I also, I probably would have talked about it, but I may not have released it publicly if the justice system would have done their job.
Good job. Yeah.
If they would have stepped in and intervened, and this man has been brought to justice. Keep in mind, this man is still preaching. He's still running around with politicians. He's still doing all these things, still doing all this stuff as if he hasn't raped somebody. And that case is, you can look this case up. If people know who the guy is, you can look the case up. My case is still under investigation. So if you try to look it up, people try to use that to discredit me. In Texas, they don't, a lot of times when there's cases like this, they haven't even allowed me to see the police report. Like, I can't even get a copy of the final police report because of the laws in Houston, Harris County, but also the state laws where they haven't. I mean, first of all, it's ridiculous. Like, my case, it happened in September. I had to go to the police 3 times to file reports, and my case is still not in the system. Y'all still investigating it's a whole mess. But the process was a lot, and where I had to get my mind right. Therapy has been, again, I'll say therapy saved my life, and it continues to do so. I have a spiritual coach that I also work with on a monthly basis. And I'm surrounded by God. Like, God is in my life. God is everywhere around me. So the process has not been easy, but I consulted people before I released the letter. I did a lot of things before I released it. I meditated, I prayed about it. And that day I released it was the day I was supposed to release it. Because it has done what it's supposed to do. Over 10 people have come forward.
What?
Yes.
And I only saw the note. I needed to go back to our timeline, but I only saw the note after we had our exchange and agreed to the date that we were going to do this interview. And then I move with spirit, right? So at the time when I saw the post, spirit said, you need to read this, but not now. Right? I usually, when it's something like that, they want me in a space of stillness, right? to really take in the information. So when that happens, the stillness is also for me to spiritually read what I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
And what I got from it was, okay, so there are going to be a whole set of other men coming forward
Absolutely.
to share their story about their experience with this pastor. That's the first thing that came up, right? The second thing that came up was that you are so spiritually protected, and that there are going to be all kinds of distractions coming to persuade you in different directions that will not serve you. But then the conversation with me and my ancestors and my spirit guides, and they said, but he's protected.
Mm-hmm.
So any day you feel as if I can't do this anymore, or what have I gotten myself into, or wait a minute, this is your work. This is what you're supposed to be doing. Because now you are leading the way for others who have been not only abused by this person, but have their own situations, and are looking to you for strength to speak to whomever they need to speak to about what they have endured.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How are you getting men to feel comfortable to get in the position of where you are right now and continue to be comfortable to stand in and speak their truth?
I think it's important for me to speak from my own experiences. Like, I think for me to show other Black men that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to feel. Giving Black men, give yourself permission to feel. Give yourself permission to do these things, and understand that there's there's no fear in love. Like, they don't exist in the same space. You can't have fear and compassion they don't exist. And I was like, you have to choose how you want to show up. And sometimes how you want to show up is uncomfortable, and I explained it often. I was like, this is not comfortable for me. This is new for me. This is me being vulnerable. This is me sharing my experience. And I always challenge Black men when we're having these conversations of Black man healing, is to tap into your own experience and to share what you feel comfortable sharing. Like, you don't have to share everything right now. You don't have to be forced to do any of those things. But healing starts with you revealing what happened to you. And it starts with acceptance, like accepting this happened. And after you accepting it, finding a way to release it. How do I release this? Like, what are some of the ways that I can release this after I've identified that this has happened to me? And that's really where it starts at, because I think often having conversations amongst each other as Black men, letting Black men know you're not alone. And I think a lot of times, like, shame shows up. Like, shame is one of those things that robs us of really living a full, wholehearted life. It shows up in
Some life, yeah,
it shows up and
yeah.
it robs us all the time. Because shame is coupled with fear, it's coupled with anxiety. Like, all these things come up because you are now thinking, because we live in such a performative society where masculinity is always this performative thing. So if I let the world know that I was molested, I was raped, I was touched, and it happened to be a man, what will the world think about me? Like, what will the community think about me? Will people show up and love me? Will people do any of those things? And I think that's why it's important for me, and it was important for me to continue to do the work and continue to just build myself up spiritually, continue to tap in with my ancestors on a daily basis, call on them when I need them, and trust that they're there and that they're going to continue to guide me and protect me as I go through this process. But also understand the power in vulnerability is so freeing. Like, it frees you. Like, we are restricted because we don't give ourselves permission to feel. And it is such a freeing thing. And that's really how we approach it on Black Man Healing. Even for me, like, it's always important for me to be able to share my experience and not try to paint a blanket statement that all Black men that have been traumatized experience trauma the same way I do. And understanding that it's okay. We're individuals. You're an individual. You know, how did this affect you? It may not have affected you the same way, you know? And so it's been a journey, but I think it's having different types of Black men from different lived experiences having a conversation together in one place about one thing has been so beautiful, but also calling on our ancestors, calling our spirits, and calling them all into that space, and curating a space that is full of trust, it's full of compassion, it's love in that space, and Black men feel it.
Yeah. How can family and friends support the Black men in their lives who have decided to come forward and speak their truth?
I think
what does that support should look like?
I think it's important to listen. You know, I think often with Black men, nobody wants to hear from Black men. Like, society silences Black men before we even open our mouth. You know, I often tell stories as even being a child. Like, I remember not being able to speak, not being able to have a voice, and not anytime I spoke up, it was silenced. You know, not being able to have questions. And even also, I think it's important for society to think about how as Black men, you hear this term like man up. And, you know, man up that's a survival thing, you know. And if we're going to progress our community and our culture and progress as a Black people, like, Black men have to start tapping into how our feelings. We have to start tapping into love. We have to get back to love. If we don't get back to love, like, we're not going to move to the spaces that we need to move to as a community. We're never going to love Black women, you know, Black men, love each other the way we have to in order for us to progress and to move forward. Like, the time is now. Like, the spirit, the universe has said that it's the time is now. Like, we have to tap into our higher self, or we will not progress and we won't move forward. And so I think, for one, is to listen and to hold space for Black men when they say stuff, to create a safe space for Black men. I can't say a safe space, a brave space, because I can't guarantee you're not going to be injured in those places, but a space where a Black man can come and be brave and be vulnerable and share, and them not feel like they're losing something by sharing it, like whether it's their manhood or any of those kind of things. But I think that's really the key for us, is for people to listen, like, create spaces for Black men where they can share.
I remember I had a session with a Black man, and he was very open with me. He was very transparent. And I was seeing things along the lines of abuse that I, as a woman, was not comfortable discussing with him, right? So what I did was I positioned him with one of my spiritual brothers. And I said to him, I said, listen, I want you to speak with this gentleman, and you guys, you know, talk. So they had the conversation, and the client came back to me and he said, Simone, did you see X, Y, and Z, bringing up the abuse? I said, yeah. He said, well, why didn't you say something to me about it? I said, well, I felt uncomfortable as a woman discussing that with you. And I didn't want the process to be that once I bring it up, you shut down. I didn't want to risk that. And maybe if I had read into it more spiritually, I would have realized that he wouldn't have shut down. But I think I showed up as Simone the woman, you know, who's trying to make sure that this man gets all the help he needs, and that not me as a feminine presence, you know, he gets vulnerable and not open to share. And he came back to me, he said, no, Simone, I would talk to you about it. And that was very freeing for me, and a lesson for me, in that I can also sit with the man in those vulnerable states and allow him to be open with my silence. And one of the topics when I first heard you on Facebook that night, you guys were talking about was men being physically abused in their relationships
Mm-hmm.
with their wives or their girlfriends or their boyfriends. And that is a topic that needs to be discussed more. And it is not.
Right.
And it is that way because, well, we know what. How can we how are we going to build that up to get to a point whereas Black men and women, we're focusing on our community. We're not focused on others. Our community, of course. How do we start the healing between Black men and women where women are now the abusers?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we start with that?
I mean, I think it is addressing things head on. I think we've done a great job at avoiding these real topics, like these real things in the Black community. And I agree with you wholeheartedly about we have to get to a point to where we address things at home first. A lot of times we're looking outside of our community. And of course, there's systemic things that are in place. There are things that definitely have impacted us and caused harm in our community. But what now? Like, where do we start? And I think it does start in our community. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier is how Black men don't feel comfortable sharing this stuff. Like, I think even addressing things like masculinity and femininity and how that shows up in ways that harm us, like even performing like this performative masculinity, often it keeps Black men from expressing these types of things that said a Black man saying like, my woman is abusive. Even that, like hearing a Black man say that, you're rarely going to hear a Black man say that even in private. You may or may not hear a Black man say that in private. God forbid he addresses this in public.
In
So
public.
I was even, and so again, like it goes back to creating spaces and spaces that where Black men feel like they can trust the space, feel like that they can trust the people, feel like that they can trust you in that space. Mm-hmm. And we've done a phenomenal job with that. And that's how I know it's time. Like, I don't doubt it. I don't think it's by happenstance. I don't think it just happened to happen. I don't think it's just me. I don't think that. I think it's a combination of where we are in the universe, and it's God saying, go. And
you know what I think a part of it is too, and some of us, when I say us spiritualists, have been having this discussion. That situation with George Floyd reset a lot of things for the Black and brown community.
Mm-hmm.
We've had police brutality. We've seen it on tape. I'm not going to go through the names. I'm not going to go through the different experiences we've had. But George Floyd happening in the middle of a pandemic, where folks were at home still.
Yep.
And had no other choice but to focus on what was in front of them. I think that this man, and we talked about it, maybe or is a martyr, because it seems as if he flipped the script, and the pandemic and COVID and quarantine and lockdown and the civil unrest that happened last year forced a lot of us to take a step back and not only look at what we're dealing with as a society, but look at what we were dealing with ourselves.
Absolutely.
And when you keep saying the time is now, I stand and say this man created the time, created the energy. His passing did that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And before George Floyd, I lost my friend to police here in Houston in May on my birthday. And so even at that point, like there had been 5 black and brown men killed in Houston that wasn't being talked about. And so then when it happened to my friend, like it changed my life. And then George Floyd happened. And so I was like, something has to, it just, George Floyd was the catalyst to
Yeah,
the
a lot of things.
world, yeah, to a whole lot of things. And I often say that the world ended in 2020. The world that we knew,
We knew
it ended. It's gone. Like people kept predicting saying the world's gone, and it did. Like
it did.
we
Yeah.
cannot go back to anything 2020 and before is no, it doesn't serve us anymore. Like we can't continue to operate in those spaces, and you see that there is a collective movement that has not let up around things like police brutality, around
Mhm.
reparations, around all these different conversations around black and brown people having equity in this country,
Yes.
and us like as a collective moving forward and doing the work. Like even Black Man Healing, there's also spaces where black women have created, where black women are having these kind of conversations and unpacking things that serve black women, serve the black community, and things that don't serve black women. Like how do we unpack these things and how do we move forward? And I think it's important too, you made a comment earlier about how we chose to keep the space no black women on the stage. And in the beginning I was like, oh, maybe we should open it up at some point. But then as the space went on, like, thank God for Wanza and Nate, because they were like, no, for me, I'm like, let's, but I think even having those two and the balance, because for me, like, I'm like spirit led a lot of times. I'm also,
Mhm.
um, my emotions, like I allow all those things to kind of show up in that space. And that's not always good sometimes. So they're always a good balance, but not even saying it's not always good, but there has to be a balance for things. So um, women, I mean, we've had so much support from black women, and so many, after all of our sessions, like we always get these amazingly powerful messages from black women on, just that space and how they appreciate it, and also how they've learned some things about black men in that space. And the one thing that in Black Man Healing, like black men have not really had a space where just black men are talking about trauma and love, healing, just all these different things, and to be just see other black men be straight, raw, vulnerable, open, no fear, and still show up as black men.
The black man. Yeah.
Doesn't take away from anything. They're still black men, still
Mhm.
identify as black men, and it's such a powerful space. But I don't know if it would have turned out the same way if we included black women. And black men
It wouldn't
talk
have.
too. Black men can talk a lot too. Like I think humans in general can. I mean, they can
Like to
talk. You
talk.
can listen, because a
Yeah.
lot. And what you said earlier was so true. Is that we often find ourselves listening to respond and not listening, and so we created these agreements in that space that encourages men to just listen sometimes and not respond and not give advice and all those kind of things, but listen to this brother's experience and not judge it, but just listen and
Yeah.
understand that that's his experience and his alone. You don't have to agree with it or disagree with it. That is his experience, and that is, I mean, it's such a beautiful thing. Like
It's
it.
his truth. That's what it is. It is his truth. And we as women need to know, regardless of what role we play in their lives, whether we're their lovers, their wives, their sisters, their mothers, that when we allow them to be in that space to speak their truth and to sit in their truth and to work through what it is and to start the process of healing, that makes the relationship between us better. They show up the way that we would want them to show up at some point, or the way the way they think is best for them, I should say, even if even if it's not the best for us. But they stand in their truth, and then we can move forward from there.
Yeah,
right?
And I think there's no timeline on healing.
Correct.
You know, and I think sometimes there's this rush to get to a certain place, and it's like sometimes during your healing process, you realize like you're already there.
You're already there.
You just haven't taken the steps to understand and unpack some of these things, but you probably have already arrived to the place. You just haven't acknowledged it. We haven't. And a lot of times we focus on the things the negative pieces of us and not looking at the goodness that is already there, that already exists. And how do we edify that? Like, how do we edify the good things, not subscribe to what happened in the past or the things the labels and all those kind of things? But how do I edify this person, and how do I love this person for where I am today? Like, how do I do that without judging it?
I think what it is some people are not able to identify when they are healed. You're not able to identify that. And one of the ways that I talk about that in my sessions is when something doesn't trigger you any longer. That's an indication that you are getting somewhere with your healing, right? I want to let our audience know that you can ask us questions. I would prefer to hear from the men with the questions. Yeah, I said it, like, you know. But I'm speaking with, I feel like I'm in Clubhouse. Let me just reset the room.
Come on.
Like Clubhouse has now created this new language for us, right?
It is.
Did you get your room by chance? Because you know they've opened that up.
I got it along with all the millions of other people that are about to have rooms.
I got it. Yeah. Isn't it hilarious? So one of my clients, she messaged me. She's like, "Simone, get a room." I'm like, I'm not standing in line with thousands of other people. She says, "No, they open it, get it before they take your name." So yeah. So I got my room. Andre Hoyt is here saying, just opening our minds and hearts removes the obstacles that prevents healing. Judgment is no longer the focus, but understanding becomes the focus.
Absolutely.
And that is so true. I want to ask you, I don't want time to get away from us. You've created Second Chances.Life. What is this initiative? Tell us about it.
So Second Chances.Life it is an organization that I created 6 years ago. Well, I founded. And what Second Chances.Life, it's focused on reducing recidivism in our community by providing housing, employment, education, and mental health is a big piece of ours as well. And it derived from, I'm one of the only males in my family on my mom's side that I don't have a felony attached to my name. And this is for the last 2 generations. And so I'm one of the only Black men on my mom's side that went to higher education and those kind of things. So I'm the quote unquote one that made it out. And I spent a lot of time working in Hollywood and in LA and doing all those kind of things. But I always knew there was something else that I needed to do. Like I just didn't feel that was all I was supposed to do in this world. And so when Trayvon Martin and a string of all the other Black boys and men that were getting killed happened, and I think it was 2015, 2016 in there, I found myself like not being able to sleep at night. You know, we were out in the streets protesting, like doing all this activism work. And I was like, how do I add to this broken system? Like, where do I channel my energy? Where do I channel my anger? Where do I channel my frustration? How do I turn this into something positive for the community? And so I just slept one night, and the spirit came to me and was like, reminded me that I was the only person in my family without a felony. And then at that time, my brother, who was now about to in his late 30s, it somehow showed me his life, how he ended up in the criminal legal system at 15, and how it has shaped his life, like how he has not really been able to move ahead. And I thought about all the other Black men from the community that I came from that too had a similar story, that like even my god brother at the age of 14, God rest his soul, he died last year. He was caught up in the system, treated as an adult at the age of 14, and just sort of how it affected his life moving forward. And so my goal with Second Chances is, how do we implement something positive from a holistic standpoint in the community, while or instead.
I don't know if you can hear me, but you're stuck.
Am I stuck? Can you
Yeah,
hear?
you're back up again. Yeah.
Where did
Go
I
ahead.
leave off at?
Your god brother, God rest his soul, he passed 14 years.
Yeah, so he was another person that was in the criminal legal system at a young age and tried as an adult. And so when I started looking at all these things, I was like, how do I implement something positive in the community instead of waiting on legislation to change? Like, how do we implement some things so when people that are coming out of that system, they have a chance to progress and move forward, even with a felony attached to the name? And how do we dismantle the stigma that's associated with the word felony? You know, a lot of times, because even a lot of times when people think of the word felony, they think of these heinous crimes and these criminals and all these kind of things, and that's just not the case. And so that's really where it derived from. And it's been life changing for me and for so many people. Like, so far in Houston, we've helped over 1,500 men, women, families with employment, jobs, housing, and this is within the last 3 years, as well with Second Chances. We also do mentorship and partner with programs. And so the employment piece comes from us partnering with local businesses, like going to local businesses, having conversations with them, contracts in place for them to hire men and women that are coming out of incarceration. And of course, we vet them. And the mental health piece, the same thing, us partnering with local therapists, different organizations from the mental health standpoint. And then housing is having agreements with different apartment complexes to house people when they're coming home.
I'm thinking meeting you and having this conversation is in divine order, because a few weeks ago I was trying to find help for a client of mine who was trying to fix their legal situation, and I couldn't, and the person is in Texas actually.
Wow.
And I couldn't find anybody. Eventually they told me to call a CLU or something like that. And when you call, you can't get through.
Yeah.
The number, it's just a hot mess. So I just remembered that earlier, and I was like, okay, so I'm going to send them to you.
Absolutely.
And then I was speaking with another spiritualist, and I was telling her we need to set up a database of folks in the legal fraternity. So when we have clients that have these legal issues that pop up when we do spiritual readings for them, we can give them direction as to, okay, I'm going to send you to this person, tell them that Simone sent you, and they're going to help you.
Sure.
So that is a conversation. I've started that conversation actually with therapists. Whereas when it comes up in the reading that the person really needs therapy, I would have them go and look for 5 therapists, and then I would read the therapist to see which one spiritually aligns with them. And then they would make the appointment with that person.
Sure.
So it wouldn't necessarily be that we would look for spiritual alignment with in the legal part, but just have an organization available, preferably in each state, right? Because sometimes Texas law, not sometimes, Texas law is different from New York law.
Right.
You know, you can't figure it out. So I'm definitely good. It's two of them actually,
Okay.
because this discussion was supposed to happen. It's
Absolutely.
two of them clients that I'm working with, and both of them are in Texas who needs legal help right now. So I'm gonna have you pretty busy. How can how can folks support this organization and all the other organizations actually that you are involved in? Because I've also seen that you've done a documentary um, as well, and there's some other organizations that you're involved with. So how can we support financially? You know, you want us to come in and volunteers with whether we're a therapist or a lawyer. Tell us how the community can come forward and make this happen.
Sure.
And support, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Second Chances, like if anybody's local and you want to volunteer, like I'll put the email in the bottom. You guys can email us for volunteer opportunities. Like we always, with the pandemic, it's been a challenge, like from a volunteer standpoint, because we've always wanted to be mindful of people's safety. But I'll drop it in there if you guys want to ever volunteer, get involved. And also,
Yeah, once I post the interview, I'm gonna put all your information in there minus your blood type.
got it. And so you can volunteer, you can get involved. Also, if you want to donate, you guys can go to our website, which is www.secondchances.life. Simone's going to post that as well. And also, we have our Cash App. The Cash App is just the $ Second Chances Life. There's no dot in it. And Second Chances is spelled the number 2 ND. It's not SECOND, but it's the number 2 ND, which is our hashtag. We're always like housing right now, especially in Texas, across the country is a big initiative. Like there's not enough housing for people in general, especially with the recent winter storm. Like we've had so many people displaced and hotel needs and all these kind of things. Of course, FEMA has come in, but FEMA takes a while to respond often with these things. So even as a community, like we've had to step up and help out tons of families here because there's still families that are suffering, that are going through issues even after the winter storm, like busted pipes. They need roofing done. I mean, they need floors redone. There's all kinds of damage that was done from a couple of weeks ago that people have been affected by that we're helping out as well. And even on the policy side, I'm the co-founder of Community Action Collective. And so what we've done is we focused on police reform and policies in Houston and on a state level. And we've made some really, really good headway with that. So if you want to get involved on the activism side, the organizing side, and policies and addressing police brutality and things like that in Houston on the state level, you guys can, we have a standing meeting like every 2 weeks with that, where you can even get on Zoom. Like even if you're anywhere in Texas or if you're in another state and you guys are doing the similar work, and if we can exchange ideas around policies, around some local stuff that you guys are doing, like feel free also to, and we have all of our platforms too. Community Action Collective is on Facebook, Twitter, also here on Instagram. You guys can follow those pages as well, or just follow me. And you'll find all the different links to that, and Simone will post that as well. But those are just ways that you guys can get involved with what we're doing. And as a film, right now, we're looking at APR will be the first platform. They just they have an agreement with Amazon, so we're gonna now. We haven't put the film on any platform just yet. We were waiting, and so now the first platform we're gonna do is APR. It's a production company that we're going to go through to post the film so people can see that. And so once we do that, people can actually see the film as well through there.
I want to show you something, how this could be a global movement, right? So Andre Hoyt says, Simone, can you share how can someone share with this organization? I am prepared to share my ideas incubator with with his
Mm,
organization. Andre is based in Barbados.
that's awesome.
Based in Barbados. So, wherever we are as a community, we can just connect and make this happen for all Black and Brown people. You know, in preparing for this interview, um, I tell my guests that I sit with their information, read their bios, of course, go through their social media platforms, and get to know them even more as I prepare. And the word trust kept popping up as I was reading, you know, and also reading, your IG pages, the work that you're doing. How can a Black man trust again during the time of their healing? How does he how does he grab a hold of that again?
Wow. Whew. That's something that that's something my whole life I struggled with. Trust was a big issue, even from childhood. And it started with my parents, started with my father. And so that was
Mm,
something that I had to really, really work through. Like I had to really work on at first, like trusting myself. Like I think really trust starts within. Like it starts with me trusting myself and listening to myself and not doubting the things that I feel and not doubting the messages that I was receiving. Like there was often times where I didn't trust myself because I didn't feel like I was enough. And I think it's important, like when Black men start to feel like when you know you're enough, when you know what you give is enough, and when you know how you show up is enough, and not doubting that who you are is not enough, you can begin to really trust yourself and trust what you're doing and trust how you show up and trust that you're showing up your true authentic self in every moment, and you're okay with that. And it may be messy sometimes, it may be ugly, sometimes it may be beautiful, sometimes it may be powerful, sometimes it may be easy, sometimes it's complicated, but you still showed up and you gave your best. And so even trusting yourself enough to be compassionate with yourself, to have empathy for yourself, and to practice those things really to me is where it starts. Like trusting myself. And then as I trust myself, then I can trust everything around me. I can trust all these other things around me and not enter these with fear, because when there's a lack of trust, like you're fearing that you're going to be hurt. You're fearing that you're not going to be received. Imposter syndrome shows up. You have all these things that show up because you're afraid to show up. It's not
mhm.
everybody else. It's me. It's me. Like, how am I showing up? Am I trusting myself in these spaces? Am I trusting myself with myself? And that's really, to me, has been one of the most important things in my life, because as I trust myself, I can enter into these situations. I can enter into relationships. I can show up in rooms. I can take these risks. And the risk comes with, there may be some pain in there. There may be some harm done, but I'm not attached to those things. None of those things am I attached to. It has been just part of the process and part of the journey. And I can continue forward whole, even with the things that have come my way and harm me. And so I think for me, that has been my journey. And I do trust Black men now. I do trust Black women. Um, but I listen. I listen to myself. I listen to my spirit. I call on my ancestors. If situations don't feel right, if there are things that present themselves that are questionable, I question them. If things need to be addressed, I address them. If there are things that say, yo, don't go, don't show up, I don't show up, I don't go. And so that's really where the process for me has began and has really helped me work through my trust issues, because even in the Black community in general, we don't trust each other because in my opinion, we allow all these external things and all these things that the world has taught us and told us about each other. They show up. They show up before we do. Like
Correct.
they'll meet our brothers and sisters before we actually meet them. Like my ideas and
Mm-hmm.
my perceptions will come meet you, and it's not me. I'm not meeting you. I'm allowing these things to meet you first instead of me actually showing
Mm-hmm.
up and meeting you and getting to know you, and it's vice versa. And so for us to, we have to get back to the shore, you know, and I think we just have to. Like, I feel like we've been lost at sea and just sort of
For so
floating
long.
around. And to get back to the shore is get back to self. Like, how do I get back to myself? How do I get back there? And it is doing this kind of work, like being silent, listening, trusting yourself, meditating, all these things, and really, really tapping into self, like loving yourself. Because to me, there's no way for me, I can't do the work that I do if I'm not advocating for self, if I'm not pouring into self, if I'm not keeping my cup
Mm-hmm.
full, if I'm not doing those things, I can't do the work. There's no way for me to do the work that I'm doing. And there, I mean, even now, like even with I knew that releasing that letter was going to, there was a lot of capacity that comes with that. There was a lot of capacity that was going to take me away from some of the things that I was doing. So I did have to prepare for that. I did have to prepare to do certain things that I was not used to doing. And it would take away from those other things. But me being okay with stepping away from some of those things to be present, to be
Mm-hmm.
where spirit wants me to be, and to show up where spirit wants me to show up at, you know, and trusting that has
Mm-hmm.
been the process.
Right. Um, hashtag ending the shame. Hashtag Black Men Healing. Second Chances.Life. Texas Advocates for Justice. Mangrove Community. We Measure. I can go on and on and on about the work that you're doing for the community. And we thank you, huh? What would you like your legacy to say?
Ah, wow. Um, that for one, I showed up.
Mhm.
I showed up in love. I gave. Um, I lived a full life, a wholehearted life. Um, Not perfect, um, and okay with that. You know, all of it. Human. I'm human. I'm being. Like I understand what being means now. Like I mean, I'm being, and my goal and my objective was to, if it's just plant the seed, and that's it. And in these different spaces, like planting seeds in these different spaces and allowing them to grow, but also a change agent, you know, and understanding purpose. Like I live in purpose. I live in purpose. I listen. I live in spirit. I live in love. And, you know, that's a very, very tough question to answer. But I think um, allowing my work to speak for itself and allowing integrity and character to show up and to know that I'm not a sellout. Like I've never sold out, you know, and I won't. That's not something I'll do. Like I'm not, my work is real work. My work is authentic. It's genuine. And that people know that, you know, because I know there's purpose in that. So I'll say that that's a very good question. You know, I mean, if I could sum that up in a sentence, it would be,
Yeah.
uh,
And you answered it actually.
yeah,
You answered it. Um, that's my last question.
This,
Do you want to say anything to the audience? Anything that touched your heart and you want to share with them now?
yeah, first of all, I just want to say to Simone, like, thank you so much for reaching out
Mhm.
to me. This is purpose. This is divine. I'm grateful
Mhm.
to be here. Thank you. Um, I haven't I haven't chosen many platforms to speak on and all these kind of things. Like, I really want to make sure that I'm mindful and careful with the platforms I come on. And
Good.
it was divine, and you know, I felt your spirit, your energy, without seeing you, knowing you. So I'm grateful that you chose me. The spirit chose us to meet at this time and to be here. So I think it's just so powerful. Thank you for your gift and sharing your gift with the world. And stay the
Thank
course.
you.
It's your work is just it's necessary, you know. So thank you for staying the course and trusting the universe. And to everybody that showed up today, like, I appreciate you all. Thank you for continuing to support me, supporting Simone, and those of us that are doing the work. And for people to understand that doing the work, it's multifaceted. Like, it doesn't mean just what we're doing. Like, there are so many different spaces and so many different places in this world for people to be in purpose, especially in the Black community, because our issues are wide, they're deep, they're long, and there is so much work that needs to be done. And I employ people to tap in and to find ways to do that, whether it's in your workplace, whether it's in the school, whether it's in your community, whether it's in healthcare, like whatever, wherever it is, like, find a place to get in purpose. And also, don't forget to bring somebody with you. Send the elevator back down. You know,
Actually,
this life is not just about you. You know, this life is about us. You know, and purpose, and purpose is about peace and people. We live in a broken world, and how do we add some healing to this broken world while we're here? And so, but yeah, and again, like, make sure you guys, if you're on Clubhouse, tune in every Tuesday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And yeah, I mean, I can't thank y'all enough for the support. And also, um, continue to follow my story. This is just the
oh yeah.
beginning. Continue
Oh yeah.
to stay abreast of that. And also, I would tell people as well, when Black men say things, like, I really hope, when Black people in general, like, when people are telling you they've been harmed, listen, like, listen to these people. Um, and often, even if things are not proven in court, that does not mean it didn't happen. And I think that's often, you know, there's a court of public opinion that sometimes discredits people before they even open their mouth. And I'm not even talking about me. I mean, there's just been so many times where I've seen where we, especially when it comes to preachers and things like that, we have put these people on these pedestals, these godlike
That is
people,
good.
and have
Yeah.
made them above reproach, you know, where we have rapists and predators that for years sit in these spaces and they harm people. So give people space when they have been harmed and they say they've been harmed. Give them grace, give them empathy, give them mercy, and also stand with them. Stand with them in their fight, because this is not easy. So
Mhm.
I'll leave with that. And I just want to say thank you guys so much. Thank you, Simone. Thank you, beautiful
Thank
people.
you.
Thank you for all your support, all your love. I'll come back anytime that you need me.
Yes, for sure. And I just want you to know that I am here. If there's any space, any work that you need done, it says, you know what, I think Simone will be ideal for this. Feel free to reach out at any time. You know, the work continues, it never ends. And this is the reason, you know, why Sacred Conversations is here, to let folks know, okay, you want to be a part of the solution, you want to be active, these are the people that you reach out to make it happen.
Absolutely.
You know, I want you to continue to be safe. I didn't tell you this, but the spirit asked me to light a candle for you because that folks are busy. You see the BS that we kind of had to plug through And I'm not even going to talk about that, but you know, you have a sister here who, I got two swords, and I come out fighting
Yeah.
because they don't sleep,
Yeah.
so we can't sleep.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So, I just want you to know, and I'm publicly stating this, that, you have my support. And I'm happy to know that you have some a spiritual elder who is, helping you through this and guiding you through this, because that piece is very important. And thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
So we will do this again. We will be in touch. I would, I'll keep posting your story and reposting, and when you have more information to give out, just let me know and I'll share it, and we'll just keep this energy going and the fire under it.
Bless
Okay?
you.
So enjoy your Sunday. Take care, and we'll be in touch. Thanks everyone for joining us. This has been Sacred Conversations with Simone. Dav has been my guest. It was intense, but it was good. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you. I love you.
All right. Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.